I've covered quite a few Foddian Type games before on this channel. They're pretty fun, but also extremely irritating. You know the gist of them by now, but the problem with these games is that, well, they're outdated. In YouTube terms, they're basically a rotting corpse. And besides Only Up, there haven't been many new games of the genre showing up. So you know I was surprised to find out that someone in 2024 made a new rage game inspired by Getting Over It, and that game is called A Difficult Game About Climbing. A Difficult Game About Climbing is, well, what the name suggests. It's a video game developed by fellow game dev YouTuber Pontypants, and in it, you climb a mountain using your character's own two hands that are each controlled by the left and right mouse button respectively. Similarly to Getting Over It, you play as a bald, naked, slightly buffed dude attempting to get to the peak of the mountain. I don't know why this is a recurring theme when it comes to games about climbing mountains, but to each their own, I guess. Now, you may be asking yourself, what makes this game so special? Huh? I mean, Getting Over It took over the gaming scene by storm when it was released, but this one did too.
What? What?
Why is that? Well, this game, honestly, is just kind of perfect. Aside from the fact that recording yourself getting annoyed by a frustrating game is just an easy way to get views from the many sadists in this world, A Difficult Game About Climbing, it just has that charm about it, you know? It's innovative with not just its mechanics, but the way it puts them to the test. All in all, they're really simple mechanics. You move your hands by moving your mouse, and left click makes you grab with the left hand, and right click makes you grab with the right hand. If there's anything about this game that's worth knowing, it's that it really feels like you're putting that physical effort in to climb the rocks. Basically, it's a lot of moving your hand around. But just like Getting Over It, it's a skill you learn, and the better you get, the more satisfying playing the game is. I personally really liked the visual style of this game when I first played it. Oh no! It's similar yet different from the Getting Over It style in that everything looks a bit more polished and not like random garbage like how Bennett Foddy would describe it. Yes, there are a bunch of random objects and obstacles thrown around, but they look really good. One of my favorite parts probably has to be the factory part, where there's just a bunch of different spinning gears and machines that you have to jump to and from, and the sound design really immerses you in this environment. Compared to other parts within this game, this part is really simple looking, but it just works in conveying this feeling that you're inside a giant factory. The graphics are honestly a thing this game does really well. It isn't a AAA game by any means, but dare I say, it's pretty juicy for a one-man project. Some parts lack detail compared to others, which is fine considering there's a lot of parts. Also, in the background of this construction area, there's a bucket of paint that just says pain on it. Yeah. Now, this wouldn't be a rage game video essay if I didn't talk about the game part, minus the rage because that occurs naturally. This game is difficult. Whoa, I said it. It's in the name. When you boot up the game for the very first time, you pop out of some water, and then the game lets you take control over your character. And in the beginning, the movement will feel very restricted, but you persist, and you climb, and the game introduces you to the first of many gimmicks, and those are the slippery rocks. You can't grab them, you'll just end up descending if you try holding onto them, which is a pretty neat mechanic in a game about climbing, since you think anything is climbable, but that quickly proves to not be the case. Also, he doesn't use his legs. I just figured I'd say that. On paper, this sounds somewhat easy, but the way the developer decided to balance the game and make climbing actually difficult is by adding one simple thing: friction. Quick physics lesson, kids. You know what friction does? It fucks you over, that's what it does. But to be honest, even though friction is supposed to make the game harder, which it does, I like it. It's a very good and easy method of foolproofing the game's only mechanic. It's supposed to make you careful about the way you move around, it adds a risk factor to the game, and it also just gives it a touch of realism because, let's be honest, there's no such thing as extra grippy sticky fingers, alright? Those only work on the subscribe button. You should press it. And when it comes to the obstacles, the developer did a good job on creating them. The entire mountain is split up into multiple parts, each new part being marked with a pool of water that's meant to serve as a checkpoint to ensure that you don't fall all the way back to the bottom. Every new segment manages to bring something new to the table whilst not being too overwhelming or complicated. However, I do think that most of the time the game is at its peak when it's just simple climbing. No physics-based stuff or anything like that. Speaking of physics-based stuff, oh god. Don't get me wrong, they're well implemented, but they're just not it most of the time. The only physics-based part I actually enjoyed playing was the construction bit, especially the part with 2 sacks that relies on weight. You're basically forced to do all of it in one clean motion because otherwise you'll weigh down the thingy and you'll just get stuck. This was a really cool part, but did we get more of that? Nuh-uh. Instead, we got a wheel and a beam. You know it's not good if instead of rage quitting because you can't do it, you have to look up a walkthrough because you can't figure out how to do it. I know my stupidity got in the way of me figuring out both of these parts, but can you blame me? The solution to them isn't clearly conveyed, which I guess has also been my fault since this is a difficult game about climbing, but still, this beam was diabolical! You have to sit and lock in for basically a full 60 seconds whilst you rock back and forth trying to get the beam to tilt high enough so that at one point you can go on the edge and grab the anchor waiting for you at the top. Ironically, the best physics-based parts follow right after, so that's good. To be honest, the beam did get a bit more fun and easier after I beat the game once, but it still annoys me that it was so confusing in the first place. What personally kind of bothered me is just how safe the checkpoints really are. Like, unless you try to fall all the way back to the bottom or further past your checkpoint, it usually would never happen. I get why they're included in the first place, it's a pretty long game after all, but they mostly nullify the danger of losing a significant amount of progress, which in my opinion is pretty essential for a rage game. Getting Over It has the snake, Pogo Stuck has parts where you'll be dangling over earlier parts of the level, and I just think there should have been a bit more risk. Maybe I'm just extreme like that. Anyways, overall I enjoyed this game. It's definitely gonna have a spot among the rage game greats. Obviously there's a few things that could have been tweaked, stuff like making the game harder and more fun to play, but in the state that it's in right now, it's kind of perfect. We're coming up on the end of the video, so it's only fair if I talk about the game's ending, right? Every rage game has to make you feel absolutely divine after beating it, and honestly, this game is no exception. You see, if you get to the peak of the mountain, you'll reach this house with a gift box next to it. If you pull the thingamajig under it, boom, confetti flies out and you basically beat the game and get a Steam achievement. But you're not an idiot, right? Of course there's more to it. If you climb on top of the house, there's this cloud you can grab on, and whoa, there's more of them. I wonder where this leads me. Weird to have such low poly clouds after all the detailed obstacles in this game. Oh, what? It was all in the head after all. And then the short climb leads to the real ending where you can find the actual end credits, and you literally use the end credits to climb further and further beyond. Thank you for your suffering. Remember, to live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. The end. Wow. Truly a great ending. And then you start your ascent in some water. You don't know where you might end up, but you did it. Truly a journey to remember. Wait. And we're back at the beginning. You can't escape the loop, it seems. So, in conclusion, this game is really good and pretty addicting. I occasionally hop on it every now and then if I'm feeling bored, which probably doesn't help since I usually end up worse. I just kind of wish the guy used his legs. It probably would have made it easier.